Hello, everyone. My name is Apostate Aladdin. Today, I am joined by my cat and a person that I've spoken to at least a couple of times on this channel before. About a year ago, less than 12 months, but about a year ago, she had initially joined Islam a few years before we first spoke. She called into one of my live streams and we had a conversation. And then she called again afterwards to tell me that she had left Islam. And now it's been almost a year from that conversation. I am curious to catch up with her. We haven't spoken much behind the scenes. I don't know what she's up to. So I'm finding out with you guys. And a lot of people have been asking, what is she up to these days? What happened? So we're going to catch up with her. I'm adding her in a few seconds. If anybody has any questions they'd like to ask her, feel free to ask in the comments. I might not get to them immediately. I'll put them aside and get to them when we have a chance, but that is an option. So without further ado, I'll let you introduce yourself. How's it going?
Going great. Thank you for asking. Thank you for having me.
For sure. So, last time you were here, you went by the name Rachel.
I did. It's on my IDs. It's what the government calls me as well.
So, what do you
Yes.
prefer that I call you? Kyla?
I mean, yeah. What I'm aiming for these days is Kyla, but I'll accept whatever's offered in the right spirit. That's okay.
Okay. Well, what motivated that name change, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, well, isn't that an interesting question? It's kind of a little bit related to this.
Hmm.
So I was, I can't remember what we discussed previously. So if I go into old history, just skip ahead, let me know. But I was married for about 3 years to a man who is Muslim, and I had converted before him. But when we went to stay in his home country, I took an Arabic name because they couldn't pronounce Rachel. And after we split up, I kind of not got rid of that name, but I didn't need it anymore. It was like when people come to the US and they say, "Oh, I'll be Joe now." I was like, no one's going to call me this name. Plus, it's tied to his family, and that has a lot of bittersweet pain stuff. Um, but at the time, I was still Muslim, and so I was like, I need something else. And I kind of was muddling through, but having my own doubt journey. And then eventually, when it came to this point in my life where it was kind of this big, I don't want to say a 180 because that means looking backwards, but it was this complete stepping into a new personhood, I would say. It kind of just felt like the right thing to market and say, I've been these people, I've had these names, but now I'm going to claim myself in the person that I am now. And yeah, Kyla is actually Arabic derived. So it has to do with Kyla. So like one who speaks out, which I think is a bit
Qaila? Okay.
apropos. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah. So it's a longer and deeper story, and somehow that was the short version, believe it or not.
Okay. I'm gonna call you Kyla. Well, I'm not actually gonna have to say your name when I'm talking to you, but I was just curious.
That's
Uh,
cool.
yeah.
That way, when you talk about me in loving terms to all your adoring fans and friends, you'll have it.
Yeah. Well, everybody has been asking about you. I've seen so many comments being like, "Where's Rachel? Where's Rachel?" So, yeah, I don't remember how we arrived at this conversation. I don't remember if I reached out to you, you reached out to me, but um, I didn't even prepare for this. I don't know what I'm going to ask you, so I wanted to ask you generally, what has changed since last time?
Just about everything. So, um, wow, yeah, last time was a long time ago, and man, around about the new year, uh, 2021 into 2022, I kind of almost accidentally found myself in spaces that I wanted to be in. And once I realized that, I was like, great, I'm going to focus on this and figure out what these people have that I want and how to get it. And so I've been on that kind of path. And so a lot of things these days, it's very much decision making based on not necessarily like brain logic, but what feels good or safe or acceptable, comfortable, and kind of direct my life in that way. So it sounds very selfish, which is a word that I kind of like these days, because I'm the type of person who, I'm sure many people, especially women, can relate, used to put themselves low on the list or not at all on the list, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and so, yeah, now I kind of check in with myself and say, do I want to do this? And if not, why? And, can I make it work? And if not, change the situation to make it work. So yeah, got this very much self-directed, make sure I feel good all the time approach to things. Quit my job in March and now self-employed. Travel the northeast coast of the US doing events and stuff. Like, I've kind of jumped in with both feet and right in the deep end, I would say, in terms of what I want and getting what I want and not letting other people choose for me and not saying I'm satisfied, I'll make it work. If I don't like it, I'm going to change it. I'm not going to just accept it. So that's pretty great.
Well, you said something about you live now not by, you don't make decisions because of logic. You just go with whatever feels right.
Yeah.
How does that compare to when you first found religion?
So that was perhaps an oversimplification. There's still logic involved. Like,
Mhm.
I'm not going to do something really stupid because I don't want to make trouble in my life. But I would say, this is kind of a next step from when I found religion, because it brings me the same type of sense of home in myself, or a connection to something outside myself, which is also inside myself. I know that for you, you're, very openly not religious, atheist, right?
Um,
Or would
I,
you choose a term?
when I say atheist, people presume that it means that I'm making an assertion about whether God exists or not. My position is I have no reason to believe that God exists. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So for me, I don't really give a shit about terminology, God, spirit, source, different names, whatever. I do feel that there's something in each person and outside of each person that connects us all far beyond what we can see and touch. And I have had what I feel is a strong connection to that for some time. And the words and the concepts that I now use to understand that a lot more clearly, um, some of the feelings I get from it in my body are the same things that I got, for example, during the um, like Tarawih during Ramadan. Just, I'm sure even people who were Muslim and are not now can relate at least once to the power of the congregation and the sound and the intention and all of the energy in there. And like, it's a special time of year, and it's just this very um, community together feeling. And these kind of super highly connected and potent experiences that I would have during those times, I can now access much more regularly and without a group of people, and just through, I guess, not my own will, but I've come to a place where I can understand how to establish that connection and how to access it, manipulate it, use it. So yeah, how does it compare? It's the next step. There have been others before it, but none quite so clearly defined and marked as the conversion, the deconversion, and the now. Everything before that was much more muddled up and, you know, crossing over of paths, because young adulthood, that's what it's like.
So a connection with the spiritual, is that what you mean?
Yeah, yeah. But also like with it can be with myself, it can be with, the divine energy of the universe, whatever people call that, with other people, with various stuff. I feel that there's aliveness, um, all around, within, without, between, and it's very fun to contact it, intentionally.
I'm always curious about when it comes to spirituality. I struggle to not find meaning in it. I struggle to make sense of it. I struggle to understand what people mean, and they often say that you got to feel it to understand it, and in some way that's how religious spirituality is.
Yep.
um, do you think that you had that inclination before Islam, or was that something that you found after Islam?
No, 100% the whole time. Um, the time when I was there was a long period of time where I went from atheist to not sure to I think there's something out there, and from there trying to figure out what it was. And that's a journey that I'm sure will take my entire life. And if there's a beyond into that as well, I don't know and don't really care. But the word that comes to mind is a seeker, and it sounds very grand, and I'm not trying to make myself into that person, but I've been a seeker. I've been trying to figure things out um, for ages, for years and years and years. That goes way back. And so there's been, like I said, a crescendo, perhaps, and some more definition and some more, knowing. When people say you have to feel it to know it, I mean, I can describe to you at certain times what I feel, like how I would tell a sketch artist for the police what to draw. Um, but yeah, for me, it's one of the things where when you feel it, it's something. You're like, this is significant. And then it's up to the person to decide whether they want to explore it and figure out what it means to them or not. But there's certain times, when the hair on the back of your neck stands up and you're like, ooh, something's coming, something's dangerous, when you're in a dark place or whatever, and round the corner late at night, whatever, the hackles on your neck stand up, certain instincts we have as humans. For me, it's a similar thing to that, where it's an innate sense, and it's up to you to explore it or not, based on your priorities, your beliefs, your preferences, etc.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've had some experiences where, being in a religious setting, for example, in a big crowd, you feel something. And I've understood that it has nothing to do with where you, I mean, it has nothing to do with the truth of what is happening. I felt that in the church. I felt that at a concert. I felt that in Mecca. I began to understand that it has less to do with the actual truth of something spiritual touching me, and more like, the chemicals in my body reacting to the situation that I'm in. So
Mm.
it's so hard for me to understand how to seek spirituality and what that means to me, because it's very personal, and that's what a lot of spiritual people say. It's very personal, and you have to seek it, and everyone's different. But I feel like I'm seeking some kind of guideline, some step by step, at least this is where you start, or this is what it means. But it's so vague to me. So it's so hard for me to understand. I'm trying though.
Sure. I guess I hear what you're saying on the it can happen at various places, and I'm glad you brought in the concert, because the other ones you listed were all religious places of significance. But yeah, at a concert, um, I think it's just, for me, it's moments of significance. There are moments when my heart, my spirit, whatever it is that people, where they feel the thing, but where I feel that it's very open and very connected to whatever else it is. And for you, I know that's the chemicals in your body. I gotcha. I'm very science as well, which is a hilarious combination. But um, I guess the way that I choose, and I do think it's a choice, the way that I choose to view it, and the way that I therefore understand it, is that it's things of significance, or things of extreme beauty, or things when there are shared experiences. And I'm not talking about when people go to like faith healers speaking tongues, and you hear the recording and you hear that it's just repetitive and they're kind of placebo affected. Because for me, that's, they have a clear goal. They're like, I want to get to here, I want this effect, I want this outcome. And so that's what's going to happen. And they make it happen. And I think that's great. I think if you can heal yourself with the power of your mind, essentially like that, that's amazing. But I'm talking about when I don't necessarily have an intention. I'm not trying to get something or do something. And it's just a moment of significance and power, and it touches me. For you, it's chemicals. And for me, it's greater significance. And I find meaning for myself. And I find joy and pleasure and truth. And with my very introspective nature, I find answers to questions sometimes that I didn't realize were on my mind. So it works for me. And so I do it.
Can you give us an example of such a question if you remember any?
Yes. I'm trying to think of one that's easily packaged. Let's see. I'm also trying to think of one that's appropriate without a trigger warning, because one came to mind, but it's a bit heavy.
So is it kind of
Oh, go ahead.
therapeutic, you mean? Like
It
realizations
can
about...
be, can be. A lot of times it's things where I'm really struggling with something, or where I'm just like, I need to know. I need to know what to do. And a lot of times religious people be like, I'm going to pray about it. And for me, I kind of just open myself and
Well, did you have these experiences back when you were a believer?
yes, but again, not as frequently and not as I don't want to say willfully, but not when I would necessarily choose to. It would kind of just be like all of a sudden something would hit me. I'm like, holy shit, what's happening right now? This is amazing. How do I get this back? And then go for months and months and be like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And I think a
So
large
you
part of that.
couldn't get yourself into that state with prayer or with something else?
No, and I think a lot of that has to do with the way that all these laws are codified and all this extra bullshit is put on top, like men can't wear gold. Yes, makes perfect sense. That's a really excellent way to focus your time and energy in your daily life, is not wearing gold. Like that's super important to focus on. Forget about don't kill people all over the world. Like check the fit, you know? But like I said, these days I'm interacting with people who have a slightly different vocabulary and a much broader sense of things. Okay, I found a recent example that's also, you know, PG. I was working on something for my business, and I was struggling for weeks on how to bring together 3 or 4 seemingly unrelated elements and put them into one package. And I was like, it's impossible. I can't do it. And then I remembered that I can do kind of whatever I want. And so, you know, I opened myself to answers without thinking I knew what the answer was. And then I slept on it, and I woke up and I had the answer, and I like super hyper focused the whole day and put the entire project together to release. So.
And how do you attribute that to spirituality?
Because I feel that for me, the way that I organize myself now and the way that I view things and the terms that I have to do it and the kind of meditative practices that go along with it allow me to access that state where I can be less mentally driven. Because a lot of the times with the mental drive, for me, I've heard it called a decision tree, but like there's a question and I have the question here, and here are 5 possible answers. And for each answer, there's 5 possible answers. And for each, you know, if then, what if this happens, what am I going to do? Planning for everything in advance, you know, contingency plans. Forget about plan B. I had like plan ZZ. That's how far I got down the line. Super stressful. And then that way I could just choose based on what happens. And I had everything prepared. Very ineffective, very big waste of my time. And so now it's more of a, don't think that I have to figure out the answer. I already know the answer. I just need to remember it. This is kind of how I think of things. I need to remember what I forgot. It's almost kind of like the concept of fitra for me, where like you're born perfectly, but uncircumcised for men somehow. And, we do things that might take us away from that, but you're trying to return to it. For me, it's kind of like when we're born, if you care to, you can look up online. There's videos of newborn infants who know where to go on the mother and to kind of maneuver themselves to latch on and feed. We see baby animals as well doing this in nature. So we have these innate senses. We know what to do. And I think society, conditioning, all these things that people bring to us kind of take parts of us away or close them off. And so my current journey is about remembering all the stuff that I let other people take away. And a lot of the time that means, like I said, just remembering. I do know what to do. I am incredibly powerful. If Harry Potter was a real thing, I would be a magic person. But it's more about gaining access to what I know, but not necessarily by thinking it. I know this is getting very meandering. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
But you're asking big questions, so they have big answers.
Yeah, I'm trying to put that into simpler terms so I can understand it and others can understand it.
Yeah, that's a very tough task.
It seems like you're meditating more and overthinking less.
That would be true. Successfully having my chronic anxiety medicated is also a big plus. That's been a journey of several years as well. But overthinking less. I got to give partial credit to the meds for that, because that's never been a choice, and now it is. Because now I can notice it happening and I can stop it happening when I want to, and that didn't used to be the case. Mm-hmm. But overthinking less, and I guess using my brain when it's useful, and letting it have a rest when something else might be better served to, drive the car, so to speak.
So can you tell me one thing that you miss about being a believer?
Well, I'm still a believer, just not in the rules that men made.
Let me rephrase it. That you miss about being a believer in Islam.
Sure. Initially, it was the community. That was a big loss for me. That was huge. There was one there when I finally notified all of my Muslim friends. They all said the same thing, which was great. It doesn't change how we feel about you. Stay in touch. Don't become a stranger. Blah blah blah. Awesome, because I was really concerned. And as life happens, not being in those spaces did lose touch. But there was one person in particular, and I remember this really vividly. She texted me. We had been planning to get together. We'd had to remove the plans a couple times, but eventually she texted me and was like, listen, for where I am on my journey, I only want to be having, these close friendships and deep interactions with other women who are on this Muslim path. And I hope you understand, but that's where I'm at. And I absolutely did understand. And I really appreciate her, A, knowing that about herself, and B, clearly communicating it, because a lot of people wouldn't do that. But at the same time, I was like, shit, this is exactly what I was afraid of. And I'm cut off and this and that. Now I'm good, because as I've been finding this new community. But what is it I miss now?
I mean, there doesn't necessarily have to be something, but I'm curious if there is.
Well, there are, but it's tricky to say, because each thing is in some way, I don't want to say tainted, because that's I'm not trying to bring any negativity and hatred. There are things that I think are utter bullshit, but there's a lot of really beautiful things. But when I think back from my own personal experience and lens, there's this beautiful thing, but then there's this other thing attached to it. For example, going into the women's prayer hall, but then remembering it's always in a shitty location. It's always second best, not properly equipped, or when once or twice when I saw somebody convert, everybody was so excited, but then knowing that the support ends pretty much right after. So these things that I say, like, wow, this was so great. I think the one thing that for me was really nice was the like the pre-dawn meal together in the last 10 nights of Ramadan, because I would volunteer a lot. And the the breaking fast meal, I really got pissed off about, because a lot of people would come in like a hurricane, eat as much as they could, and then run out before the prayer started. And I was like, okay, like, you got to do what you got to do. That's fine. I'm not here to question you, but also it's kind of rude. Like that, because I'm talking in like affluent areas. This is not like, taxi drivers who only have a 5-minute break. I'm talking about like people who are just trying to get a free meal because they feel like it. And again, they are welcome to eat, but when you bustle in here, kind of like barging through, and I was just like, what the hell? But the pre-dawn meal, my God, the loveliest people, everyone's tired AF, but also kind of caught up in the whole spirit. And then you have the simplest thing. It's not complicated. We would usually do like cream cheese, honey, a boiled egg, and a bit of bread. Bomb. Best thing ever. And the people who were there, it was almost like the hardcore crew, because I would only do 1 or 2 nights of that because I had to work. But it was like, this is a moment you can't recreate. These are people that are only here now. It was present. It was presence. It was being in the moment, and nothing else outside even was a consideration, let alone a factor. So yeah, I think that's the one. The pre-dawn meal was really nice.
Well, it sounds to me that you've had similar communal experiences since then, but not around that meal, right?
Correct. And there's other things that, I mean, I could draw parallels. There's certain spaces that I work in right now where a particular event, shall we say, or an event will end at like 1, 2 in the morning, and then a lot of times I'm the one who will see the person to bed and like make sure they're taken care of well and that they can rest, and then I'll go to the kitchen and clean up the whole kitchen and be in service in these other ways, which being in service really brings me a lot of joy. And so yeah, I can find these similar parallels where there's like an element here, an element here, an element here, and I say, this kind of reminds me in a very bittersweet, nostalgic way of this part in the previous chapter of my life,
Mm-hmm. It sounds like it's your outlook about it that's making you experience it one way or another. I mean, whether you're going to be in a gathering around, Ramadan time or somewhere else, you still feel similarly, right? And that's a good thing, that you get to take something good out of it at every stage.
Yeah.
And is there anything spirituality wise, belief wise, that you miss? A belief that you don't have anymore?
No, because a lot of the beliefs that I knew I was supposed to have troubled me, which for quite a while I was just kind of like, that's fine, I'll focus on the main, like the trunk, the tree trunk, and the leaves and the little twigs. I'm like, I'll let somebody else figure that out. And that was kind of part of what brought around the whole thing about a year ago, where I couldn't reconcile anymore. Like, I feel that discriminating against the alphabet mafia is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Intrinsically, just cause, and teachings say otherwise. So is there any beliefs that I miss? No, because the ones that I still agree with are compatible with how I live my life now, and the ones that I don't agree with are as far away as I can fling them, because humans are humans, and a lot of things that people claim to be choices are not.
That's an interesting answer, because you don't really have a belief system to adhere to at the moment, right? You're just
You
whatever
mean like
you
a formalized one, like a codified one?
yeah, like a structured belief system that you have to take all or nothing.
Right. And that's the whole problem, because all religions are man-made. I think they're all divinely inspired. I think all of them at the beginning had somebody or a small group of people who had some kind of significant experience and wanted to share that with people, but they were humans too. And so they are not perfect. And I think to model your life after one imperfect person as a differently imperfect person is a way to cross multiply your imperfections and fuck everything up. And then to write it down as a book of laws for everyone to follow, like, there's an awful lot of places for things to go wrong. So
Mhm.
for me, like I said, all religions are man-made. All of them have good qualities. I think all of them at their core have the same basic tenets, like campfire rule, leave it better than you found it. Golden rule, do unto others. Love thy neighbor, do less harm than good. In the balance, it all shakes out. But yeah, the details are where religions just get really bizarre and punitive and restrictive and shaming of people. The average Joe on the street, not a problem. But the people who take any religion super to any extreme are the ones who ruin it for everybody else.
Well, that gets me wondering, people sometimes turn to religion for guidance, spiritual,
Sure,
moral, all that stuff. Where do
absolutely.
you get your guidance now?
It depends. So, in the lens of religion, I think one of the shortcomings is that these books that people live their life by are really old. And so when there's a new question in a new world, and especially these days, when we look at the trend of like, oh God, I'm in mirror mode. So this is 0 year, like history, I don't know, long time ago, and this is now. And if we look at progress, it's been like this, like this, like this, like this, like this, like, oh. So there's so many new questions all the time, and there's so many new ways that we progress and inventions and whatever it is that comes. There is absolutely no way that back in the day all of those answers existed, or even all of those concepts. um, so where do I get my answers? Where do religious people get their answers? I think I do the same process, which is first I look at what I already know, or what parts I can put together from what I know that basically make sense, that don't feel like I'm lying to myself, because I have a pretty good sense of my conscience and what's right and wrong. And if I can't figure it out, then usually I'll do this thing I described previously where I kind of reflect on it if it's a big thing. But if it's small and I just want an answer real quick, ask somebody smarter than me. That's what I always used to do. That's what I do now. And it's just a different group of people who I think are smart. And yeah, allow each person to specialize in their specialty.
Well, I'm sure that given your personality, you don't seem like the kind of person who would do something to harm someone else. But sometimes a religious person would think that without a moral guidance, yours, like you said, is stuff that you've learned, and people who are you think are smarter than yourself, and you defer to yourself and how you feel, about what is right and wrong. Um, do you think that on a large scale that could be a problem, and that people definitely need a religion to steer them right?
I can't say for anyone else. Do I think people need religion? It's a tricky question, because separating religion from spirituality or connection is really hard for most people, especially if they've been raised in it, because there is no other option. No other option has ever been presented. And for a lot of people to reject what they've been raised in would be a huge problem, not just for people they're connected with, but for themselves. That's very like identity shaking. And, can I don't recall what was your exact question. Sorry. What about where do people find guidance? What was it?
So part of how you find moral guidance is yourself and what you feel is right and wrong, and
Yeah.
you don't seem like the kind of person who'd hurt someone else because of that guidance. But
Mhm.
some religious people would argue that not everyone is like that, and therefore we need rigid structure to some extent, or some reference. Do you think that the world would be a good place if everyone followed your method of finding guidance, moral guidance, or
No, not at all. I think everyone should do what's right for them. I think a lot of people don't question if what they're doing is right for them. I think they just take it. And I think it's sad, but I think it's kind of the way that a lot of people are. Um, because because of various reasons. Maybe they've never had exposure to other ideas. Maybe they have no reason to question it. Like, I don't know. I'm not everybody else. But does what works for me work for everyone else? Absolutely not. Does what works for someone else work for me? No. So I don't expect anyone else to, you know, say, oh yeah, this is the answer. I, I
Mhm.
only know what I know. And it's different, but it doesn't mean it's better or worse than what someone else has. It's better than what I used to have. Oh shit, that's my alarm, sorry.
No worries. Let me remove you
There we
first.
go.
Okay, you're
Nope,
back.
I'm back.
All
Yeah,
right.
I didn't know I went away. That was weird. But
Yeah.
yeah, what works for one person in one circumstance, in one lifetime, in one era of civilization, it would be super hard to copy paste that, any other time, place, person. So I don't think anybody should do anything other than check in with themselves and say, do I believe at the core of myself that what I'm doing is right? Or, whatever the question may be for the action for the time. I think if people were a little bit more willing to question what others tell them, uh, that might make the world a better place. Because I think a lot of people take things without even wondering if there's another option, or if what they're being told is not necessarily right, but like, morally okay for them. I think a lot of people forget to check in with themselves, forget to use their own moral compass, and just accept what they're told. And there's a million reasons why, but I'm not really about that.
Well, I want to ask you some questions now from the audience that I had put aside.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
nice. Let's do it.
Let's see. So here's a question from Finn. Finn Jake is asking, regardless of religion, do you think society needs communal reminders on how to act onto others, especially in this time of polarization?
Ooh, okay, let's see. Communal reminder. I mean, isn't that what laws are? So, do you need laws? Because religion is just moral laws. Um, you know, government laws are laws of the land. Religion is spiritual and such laws. So, do we need laws? Yeah. And I can only assume that back in the tribal days, before land boundaries and therefore power were all solidified, that religion was the way to make laws across a grand, land. We don't organize ourselves in the same way now. But do we need laws? Do we need an agreed upon set of things? Yes. And within that, honestly, we also kind of agree which laws we're going to ignore. Everybody speeds when they drive, but that's a law that we break all the time. So I think even growing up, when I was like 6 years old, I remember other 6 year olds at my school. I grew up in a really Christian area in the Midwest, like north of the Bible Belt. But we were the only atheist family. There was one Jewish family at my elementary school. There was one uh, family, like Black, African American, depending on what term people prefer. And then there was a whole bunch of white Christians. And I remember being told at 6 years old by another 6 year old, you're going to hell, and so is your family. And an adult told me the same. And there is absolutely no way that that's right. There's absolutely no way that the law in a religion that tells somebody that is right. And there's no way that if they look inside themselves, they would agree with that. That a 6 year old child should be told, you're going to burn in hellfire because you don't believe the same as me. I think laws in the land help us a bit more, but I think that we also need to look as a society, as a people, as a group, whatever your self identified group is, and say, today is today. We wrote those laws yesterday or a year ago or 200 years ago, and are they still good for now? Um, I think, yeah, progress is fast. People are slow.
Well, still got more questions for you.
Cool.
But first, I'll read some comments. Well, thanks for the super chat, Finn, by the way. Anybody can ask questions, and I'll read them whenever I can. No super chats necessary, by the way, but thank you. Someone was saying Aladdin's voice is like artificial intelligence. I Some people have been theorizing that I'm actually not real, I'm AI. And
Oh,
I support the hypothesis. That's why I can type while I'm listening, while I'm talking at the same time. So, uh, th-
okay.
yeah, that's a conspiracy theory right there. And okay, here's a question about your past, if you don't mind answering that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
What-
Selmila's asking, what did your husband think when you left Islam? Did he try to convert you back?
I have no idea what he thinks because we're not in contact. I left after he had stopped contacting me, so I have no idea what he thinks.
So
Did he try to convert me back? No.
you broke it off before you left Islam, is what you're saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And actually, at the time, I don't remember who it was, but there was somebody like face to face with me who said, I think you came to Islam as a way to deal with your personal problems. I was like, okay, what do you mean by that? They said, well, I think you wear hijab because you're ashamed of your hairstyle. And I was like, interesting. I'll show you all the pictures from years before when I walked around like this, but okay. And I think you came to Islam for your husband. I'm like, it was before I knew him, but okay. And I don't remember what the last one was. There was something else where they had cooked up a theory in their head. I said, well, I hear you, but you may notice that husband's gone and here I still am. So if I converted for him, what the hell am I still doing here, dressing myself up in all this stuff every freaking summer humid day? Like, just, it really makes me giggle how in the comments there seem to be, and not the live comments, I'm not watching that, but looking back on the other recordings, there's a whole, there's some people who are like, glad she's happy. Cool, thanks. There's some people who have all sorts of weird shit to say that I don't even understand. I see you too. And then there's two groups. The groups who are, oh, good, she was blah, blah. Now she's so much better. And I'm like, I see your projection. I see your own struggle. And then there's the people who are, she was never Muslim or she'll come back. But I'm like, I also see your projection. I also see your struggle. So it really makes me giggle.
Yeah, it's like I was telling you before the call, it would you appeared as a Muslim and then you appeared as an ex-Muslim on my live streams,
Mhm.
and in both instances there were people from all sides saying the weirdest things without actually listening to the conversation, like
Oh, yeah.
negating each other, negating themselves. It's funny. Um,
Yeah.
I still get people to this day who watch the old videos of you and they're like,
Hmm.
she's not actually a Muslim. If she was a Muslim, she would know this and this. I'm like, bro, you're like 3 seasons behind.
She got a new costume and everything. Come on now.
Yeah. Let's
Lord.
see. I have some more questions for you from the. Wait, not this one yet. Give
Oh,
me a second.
oh well.
It has to
One
go
of
in
the
queue.
keys.
Happy Love is asking you now, what do you think about the Dawah gang? I don't know
I
who that
mean,
entails exactly, but yeah.
I assume it's the people who go on and they're like, brother, you have to come to Islam because blah, 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 and like give all the proofs. I think the same as I thought before, more or less. I mean, maybe I'm a little more willing to say it without sugarcoating it now. But uh, there's a lot of content out there for people who want to consume it. We'll put it that way. People who want to watch those videos because they want to get inspired, have fun. People who want to watch those videos because they want to get all fired up and pissed off and go like keyboard warrior in the comments, have fun. People who want to ignore it because they think it's a big fucking waste of time, come over.
Well, in the same vein, I'm pretty sure I already know the answer to that, but
I see.
like, did you or will you talk to Dawah people about your apostasy?
What's the point? If I'm here with you because you have interesting conversations and you want to talk to people and learn about them and maybe question and probe and not necessarily make them uncomfortable but not be afraid to make it uncomfortable. Whereas the Dawa gang to me is just there with one objective. You're there with an objective of let's explore, and they're there with an objective of I'm right. And I have a feeling that I'm right for me, they're right for them, therefore we're both right. But they don't seem to have the same viewpoint. So what's the point of me talking? Like, if I'm not there to convince them of something, they don't want to have the conversation and I don't want to fight because I have better things to do with my time.
That's pretty much what I expected you to say about them, because when you called even the first time, people were asking me to grill you about things, and I was trying to explain to them she's not here to prove that Islam is true, right? Or
No.
when she left to prove that Islam is not true. But those conversations usually go that way on that kind of channel.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And I
no,
mean, and heads up for later, once like the regular comments are open, I'll be there a little bit for fun. But like anybody who wants to come and start a flame war, just I'm telling you right now, I'm opting out. I got better shit to do. Bye.
you're a busy person.
Well, yes and no. I make choices. All right, what do we got here?
Tema's asking, I wonder if she had an angry face for being lied to when you
Nope,
left
I wasn't
religion.
lied to.
No.
No, I consumed all the content that I wanted to. Just like the Dawah gang, their content is out there if you want to consume it. Did I suffer from confirmation bias? Hell yeah. Google algorithm showed me the information I wanted, the search terms I put in when I was trying to initially get answers to questions that bothered me. I found the content that answered the questions the way I would want it to be answered. And then um, once I had some real life experience, rather than, I don't want to say being lied to, but I read the content that the algorithm knew I wanted to see. It never gives me Fox News results, I'll tell you that much. But yeah, I wasn't lied to. I think I went in with the best intentions, but with blinders on. And I think that is inevitable, honestly, for any convert. I think, like I said, people who are brought up in any religion have a certain type of blinders on. People are told things, they accept them. You know, their children, they're told things, they accept it from these authority figures. And just because you get older, there's still authority figures in your life. For me, I went seeking and I found answers that were written in a way that pleased me, that, you know, let me have the kind of peace at the time that I needed and helped me understand two things. But once I got in the middle of it and learned from regular people rather than, you know, these very outlier viewpoints that I found were quite uncommon, um, that's when, you know, a bit more everyday truth became apparent. So yeah, I wasn't lied to. So no, I wasn't angry about that. That was my own damn fault. And Google.
See, I think a lot of ex-Muslims who grew up Muslim feel lied to, and that applies to other religions as well, because they feel like they uncovered a truth, or they uncovered that what they learned was not true. But
Yeah.
I don't know if lie is the right word, because I think for a huge part of what we learn as religious people, it wasn't deceptively taught to us. Um,
Nope.
is there deception? Sometimes, yes. Like there's certain lies that the preacher knowingly says because he doesn't want you to dig deeper in that area. True.
Mm-hmm.
But for the majority of it, they actually believe that this is the truth that they're teaching you. Like they're
I
not,
know.
yeah. So people feel like lied or betrayed to, betrayed or lied to because they didn't do the search like you did, and then adopt Islam, and that's why part of why you don't feel lied to, because you saw all the options out there, or at least all the favorable ones, and you
Mm-hmm.
realized, okay, this makes sense to me right now. But to them, they got that information before they even developed the reasoning faculties, so it feels like they were lied to, but
Yeah.
they they
No, I
weren't
get that
lied to.
totally.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing. That's why I'm saying, like, that's why when there was the question about, do you think other people should do it the way you're doing it? No, I think they should do it the way that's good for them. And if that means they're in a religion, great, have fun. You mean, don't hurt anybody else. Don't try to push your beliefs on people because hashtag consent. But um, yeah, it's anybody who teaches someone else anything teaches them what they think is correct. If it later turns out that that's disproven or that the other person disagrees or whatever, that's the other person's truth. Both can be true at the same time. And I think part of a journey that a lot of people don't ever get to, and not just in religion, in all things, when they feel they've been wronged in some way, is that they don't necessarily get to a point where they can see and really deeply believe both people can be right at the same time. And best intentions with worst outcomes are still best intentions. So that can be really hard when it's something that really is restrictive or like impacting somebody in a way that they don't like. But that's kind of how I try to see it for myself.
Related question, MKWK is asking, have you read any Yaqeen Institute articles? Have you come
Ever
across them?
recently?
Like
Ever?
during,
Yeah.
as a believer, I mean.
Yeah, once upon a time. I mean, not in the last year, so I'm not up to date. I couldn't quote anything for you. I'm assuming this is not a 10.
No, they're just asking, like, have you
Yeah,
read
one.
any? Did you have any opinion on the time, or you just don't remember? It was so long ago.
Yeah, I don't know. Sorry to disappoint.
That's all right. Um, and this one is maybe meant for me, but I'd like you to take a stab at it if you have an opinion. What do you think about Jordan Peterson's view on religion? Are you familiar with his views on religion?
Why don't you go first? Because I'm trying to choose my words pretty carefully on this person.
Um, I had one video where I talked about a compilation that someone put of Jordan Peterson talking about God, and
Hmm.
the main takeaway was, to me at least, or not takeaway, but one of the slogans was, "I don't like that question," is what he says, and he usually
Hmm.
cries about the topic, and he usually says nothing of substance. It seems to stem from his need to make sense of some tragedies in his life,
Hmm.
and he doesn't give any concrete answers about God is this or that. And it seems to fit a lot of different people from different backgrounds, and they think that he's talking about my God. He's talking about my understanding of God. Um, I think it's generic enough, and it plays on people's need for, I don't know, people's need for an explanation for what they think is going wrong in life. You know,
Hmm.
they look at certain crimes in society and they're like, see, if Jordan Peterson's God was here, or like if we all believed in Jordan Peterson's God, then things would be better. He appeases the crowd that thinks that the society is in moral decay because we're all straying away from God's light. It's You see that going on and on again, but he does it so well and speaks with such authority, and people fall for it. That's my take on it. What about you?
So I would open that up a little larger than whatever his views on religion are, to be that I think people follow him regardless of what he says or doesn't say, or fucking speaks and doesn't say. He's the one with the make your bed thing, right?
I think I
Every
heard him
morning,
say
it's like
that.
this men's work thing. Every morning, men wake up, make your bed, do the one thing, it'll organize your day. This is what I remember mostly. Um, what do I think about Jordan Peterson? His views on religion, his views on all things. I think if somebody benefits from it and they're able to find structure in their life and they're able to correct whatever it is that they feel is wrong from what he says, awesome. For me, I feel like he's overly intellectual in the sense that I think the way he talks around things is probably really fun for other like-minded academics, but for me is a bit tedious. Um, and as far as his views on religion specifically, I guess I haven't looked that much into it that I could comment on that. But that's the long and short of it. I think there's something there for people, but for me, it's just a bit um,
Well, you said overly
self-serving
intellectual.
almost. Yeah,
Overly
he gets
intellectual. What does
very.
that mean?
I mean, I think he gets very highfalutin about some of his concepts, and I think a lot of the things when he goes into these like long ass lectures, um, I think they get very broad and very grand beyond the topic that he's said he's going to address. And a lot of, again, I haven't been looking at his religion lectures, so I can't comment on that. Please, everybody, understand this. I've seen a little bit of his stuff about like how to be an adult man, which is a little bit different. And yeah, I think it just gets kind of um,
I
overblown.
don't know if I would call that overly intellectual, or more like, is that gish
Pompous,
galloping?
pompous, pompous, pompous. That's
Pompous.
the word I
Okay.
want. That's the one. Thank you. That's the real word. All right. I,
Pomp
I, I retract my previous word and I put in pompous.
Pompous. That is more fitting. Yes, and I try to follow what he's saying, and some people seem to think that because he uses big words and talks about huge concepts and switches between topics and starts talking about things that are out of your depth, that he
Hmm.
is right, and you just can't keep up with him. But
Oh, because he sounds smart, he must be intelligent.
yeah, a lot of preachers do that, religion or otherwise. Like
Oh, yeah.
they tend to do that. But when you actually follow through with every sentence that he's talking about, are you finishing the thought to its conclusion? The person that you're quoting, what did that person say? What does this quote have to do with what we're talking about? And you realize that he's not actually saying that much of substance sometimes. This is too generic, to have a whole take on everything that he's ever said. But this is the vibe that I'm getting from him. And the question here isn't, to make a moral judgment on Jordan Peterson or summarize his entire personality in lectures, but our view of him as someone who's looking at his work, right? And pompous is part of it. Yeah. So
I mean,
yeah.
the other thing is when you talk about him using all these big words, yeah. The thing is, though, according to people who know marketing, the best way to reach a group is to approach them at like a 5th or 6th grade literacy level. And that's not a commentary on the state of education, please. It's just about the way we talk and the way we write are not the same. And if you want to talk to somebody and have a, conversation rather than a lecture, then you have to do it in a vernacular. There's a freaking pompous word in the common language. And I think when he does all these big words and shows how intelligent and how studied and how learned he is, awesome, like great flex. But it has this power where people just say, wow, he really must have something there. And they don't actually find out what those words mean and therefore what he said. And I think if he was as smart as he thinks he is, he would talk to people in a way they could understand. There, I said it.
I agree with that. Sometimes when I'm not qualified to talk about something, or if I haven't formed the thoughts in a way that I can express them, I would rather not. Wait, would you? Oh, that's nice.
I know, it's a hot chocolate and a breakfast cookie.
Did you manifest those?
Yes, I did. I meant. I opened myself to it and I embraced the possibility. No, I didn't do shit. My nameless benefactor in the background, unless he chooses to come be named, brought these from outside without even asking if I wanted them, and the answer is yes.
See, that would have been a trick if someone in the comments had requested that you manifest this and it just happened. Then I would be impressed. But yeah, that's sweet of him.
Yeah.
Let's see, a couple more questions. Reverend Tacos Entertainment Channel is asking, at this point, will she look into other faiths such as Hare Krishna or something else? Hare Krishna or Hare Krishna? I don't know.
Yeah. Typo. Reverend Tacos is pretty great. Tacos, damn. No, it's not lunchtime. So, will I look into other faiths? No, thank you. Like I said before, all religions, man-made, all imperfect, all very well intentioned, but all fucked in some way.
Okay, and see, that's the thing when people say, I hear this a lot from Muslims that once you figure out that there is some religion out there that must be true somehow, then it's your job, it's your duty to go and search till you find out that it is Islam. And that's not how people operate. If you were in a religion and you realize it's not true, maybe you'd be inclined to find another one and, apply the same critical thinking that got you out of the first one or whatever it may be and see if it still holds. But most people would just think, yeah, I'm done with the concept. Does that make you a bad person? If there truly is a religion out there that is the one true religion from God, like, are you a bad person right now for choosing to just, not keep searching?
No, because if it's true, it'll come find me.
Well,
I don't have to do anything. If it's that great, it'll find me.
then the apologist could retort with, but no, it's hard work. You want enlightenment, you go seek enlightenment. It's very entitled of you to expect it to come to you, and so on and so forth.
I feel I am not so grand to say that I feel that I am enlightened, but I feel that I have the tools and the resources and the connections at my disposal to go in that direction if I so choose. I feel at home and at peace with how I live my life. And if there's something bigger that I don't know about yet, I hope I find it. But again, as far as organized world religions go, they are well known about enough that, you know, if they are not actively trying to spread it and they're not doing it in a way that's effective, that's the religion's failing, and therefore it's not perfect. So the apologists can say what they want and they'll repeat themselves, and I shall also repeat myself. And again, they have a different view. Cool. Good for them. I'm excited. But I still think what I think.
Here's a question. Well, two related questions. Nazon
Ooh.
is saying, how long was she a Muslim and what was the main thing that made her convert and then leave?
Go watch the old streams, up the view
Yeah.
count. You like how I handled that one?
Yeah, referred to the old streams.
Do you want the nutshell?
Yes, give us the quick,
Wait, go
quickie.
back. Yeah.
And
Oh no, go back. I can't see. Go
and
back.
this question right here. Yeah, what was the
Yeah,
main
yeah.
thing
How
that
long
made
was
you
I Muslim?
convert? Yeah.
How long was I Muslim? I'll say 6.5 years. What was the main thing that made me convert? Confirmation bias. I wanted to know. I'd heard a lot of shit after 9/11 and along the path about how terrible Muslims were and this and that and the extremists. And I was like, there's no way this is how the regular person is. So I had an academic interest, eventually turned to a personal interest. And there were a couple main questions that I was torn on that once I found answers that satisfied me, I said, great, here I am. And then I found out they weren't really the whole picture. There you go.
All right, that's the nutshell answer. And Stablio, that's an interesting name. May I ask, as you are a convert, no, was a convert, how did you grapple with some things like the Buraq story, like the prophet flying to see God, moon splitting? Did you believe it all at the time?
Guess what? Turns out they don't tell all that shit to the newbies. Just like in Scientology, they don't tell you about the aliens in the volcanoes right away. They don't tell you about that right away. That's some of the good mythology that you have to like read into a little bit. That is not all the main stuff when you're on Google. All of this mystical, magical stuff that's possibly allegory, possibly dream vision. I don't know. I wasn't there. Could it have happened in real life? Very much doubt it. Could it have happened in a dream that seemed real? I think we've all had those. So it makes the legend and the myth that much bigger. Like Paul Bunyan and his Blue Ox were how great? Just saying.
So at the time when you were a believer, if you did after you got into Islam and you were told about these, those weren't enough to make you not believe anymore, right?
No. At that point, there were already enough things that were from the main texts that I had, if not an issue with, a strong question mark in the middle of my mind about, where I had already kind of started to sort and compartmentalize and say, this is what I'm focusing on, this is what I'm curious about, this is what I'm going to kind of actively ignore. And I can admit that I did that. I said that I live in a place, I am a person who has the following rights, privileges, etc. And while I feel really badly for people who don't have those same opportunities, it wasn't a huge factor in my life. And so I kind of put it along with all those questions. And I was like, cool story. Sounds cute. Splitting the moon, though. I think very like maybe middle school level science tells us no.
Here's a question for me. Peter 2 Apologetics says, why do atheists say, oh my God, if they don't believe in God? Well, I guess it's also a question for you.
It's an interjection. That's why.
So why do you say,
Should
oh
I
my
change
God?
to say, oh my God? Say, oh myself. That's what I'll start saying every time I want to call on a higher power. Oh myself. That's how great I am. Then I'll get shit for that. Why do we say, oh my God? Because it's a fucking turn of phrase. That's why. I don't know if this was meant to be a funny question or not, but if it was meant to be a serious question, they say there's no dumb questions, but that's a dumb question.
Well, someone was saying, where to go? A commenter was saying, oh my void. That's
Oh my void. That's a good one. Oh my void.
OMV.
OMV. Yeah, oh my void.
That's the new OMG.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, God is mentioned more in the bedroom than anywhere else, if you're doing things right. Is that because
Oh, I
people
was about to say something. Sorry. That was a close call.
That's the point that I'm trying to make is people scream, oh my God, in certain situations that, God is not there. I hope like he's not really participating in anything.
Well, here's the thing. here's the thing, and I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but A, you said God's a he. I think God is beyond gender. I think all these verses about in his image, whatever, most languages and most societies have been male driven, and therefore most like group pronouns are male by default in most languages, at least that I'm familiar with. And God is not a man. God is a force. I think the fact that we as humans are so puny that we can't understand anything beyond what we see in our life, and we're like, oh, it must be a bigger one of me with a long beard, because old means wise. But yeah, oh my void, oh my me. It's this is getting fun. I'm excited. I kind of trailed off there, but yeah, God's not a man. I'm sorry to anybody who thinks that he is. God is a thing. God is a force. God is greater than we can conceptualize. You know, what was first, the universe or God? Does God exist because we exist? I don't know. Kind of cool though.
I like to sometimes call God a she because it gets some people riled up.
Yeah.
And because in Islam, it's God is genderless, and that's Muslims will fall back on that and say God is genderless. He's not like man, but every pronoun is a he, him in Arabic, and that's because Arabic doesn't have a pronoun for the genderless God.
Mm-hmm.
And whose fault is that? God decided which language it was going to be. So yeah, I think it's a little suspicious that God happened to choose a language that had a he instead of an it, and sides with the men on everything. But still, if people really don't mind, then I can either call God an it, and I'm sure Muslims wouldn't mind that too much, but then she should be just as valid as he. If he is inaccurate, right? She is inaccurate.
Hey, you know, and yet somehow when you put the S in front of the he, all of a sudden people get all up in their shit. S stands for shit.
S stands for she. We've got
Uh-huh.
we've got even more questions.
Shit. All right, go for it.
The questions are getting more and more interesting now.
I'm excited. Is that
Let's
because we're
see.
being spicy?
Miro is saying, what do you think about the seemingly new movement of easygoing Muslims who pick and choose and are convinced Islam might have been altered, but it's still the best religion, very hard to counter?
Been there, done that. Didn't work, left.
You're saying that was you, right?
Oh, yeah. When I came on the first time, I was like, oh, I identify as a Quranist. I was already halfway down there, man. Like, you know, the compartmentalizing I talked about, it got to the point where I was like, holy shit, this cannot exist with this. Like, these don't go together. And also, I don't believe this part. And, you know, this is wrong. And I don't like discrimination. And I feel shitty walking around with the hijab on because people assume that I don't like the gays. It's not that I like or don't like them. I just think there are other people too who get to live their lives. What a novel idea. So do I think it's altered? Hell yeah, I think it's altered. That was another thing once people started giving me the info on the history and the reorganization of the chapters and how the magnificent ring structure is all manufactured. And I was like, oh, well, that is interesting.
It was a phase for you, but do you think that you said been there, done that? Do you think that every Muslim who has that view is gonna eventually stop being in denial?
Who said they're in denial?
Well,
It's an
yeah,
opinion.
maybe I was rephrasing that and that was wrong.
It's not that
So
it's wrong. It's just if they get to a point past that where they then feel that was my denial phase. But for a lot of people, if that's where they live forever, that's just their truth. And so I'm not trying to make you wrong because that is for you when you may have been in denial if you went through that phase. I don't know. But for me, it wasn't that I was in denial. It was just that I wasn't yet ready to accept what was coming. It's that I wasn't yet ready to reconcile for myself the yes and the no and figure out where I was going to be my yes. And for me, that meant leaving. For other people, it might be something else. So, very hard to counter. Why do you need to? And who's this? Miro 55. Very hard to counter. I don't know you, Miro. And so if you're debating people because you enjoy it, awesome. If you feel you have a mission, go for it. It must be tricky. But otherwise, the question that I ask myself is, why does it matter? What is it they're saying that is so terrible that I need to do something about it? And a lot of times the answer is there's not, and I don't, and it's not my problem, and I'm going to live my happy life. So That's what I got.
See, my part about very hard to counter is I don't know their motivations for getting in those conversations, but
Yeah.
I get why it's frustrating, especially to a lot of people who have left Islam, is when they see it as a shield, like a cloak for Islam, that when Muslims get away with, this kind of cherry picking in the eyes of an outsider, it just gives Islam a pass, and then they don't pay attention to,
Oh,
things that are happening to other people who don't happen to be around the easygoing Muslims, right? It's like a front almost for Islam.
okay. In
That's the
that case,
bothersome
what
part.
about the people who cherry pick from the more severe verses and who live their lives like that? Those are the ones we see on the news, right? There's the meet a Muslim, hug a Muslim. I've seen that where it's like, have donuts with a Muslim, people who do these little like things in their communities because of these issues where there's negative portrayal and they're like, hey, we're just like everyone else. Now, if you get down to the nitty gritty and you ask them the tricky questions, I don't know what they might say, but um, that's kind of where I got to, where I was like, hey, so and so seems like a everyday person I could get along with, Muslim who is progressive, and I would talk to them and kind of press them, and after they stopped dancing around the questions and the answers, I would find out that they were also fairly close-minded about issues I care about. So are there people out there who would have been similarly aligned to me? Maybe, possibly. Do they give an incorrect portrayal? Yes and no. Are they the majority opinion? Absolutely not. But is their opinion or their way of practicing true for them? Yes. So it's a tricky one because how do you ask someone to betray their own truth in order to portray the truth of the larger group? You see what I mean? And I'm not trying to avoid the question and say they're not wrong or they are wrong for cherry picking or misrepresenting. I'm just saying that just like when we talked about intentions and people feeling lied to, I see it as a similar thing. They are expressing themselves in the way that they understand it, the way that they've reconciled their daily worldly life with these grander spiritual religious teachings, and this is how they've managed to make it work. So that's it gets
I mean,
tricky. It gets tricky.
the way that I would counter that is not really countering it per se. I would tell them, okay, good for you, do your thing, but don't get in the way when we're protesting the concept itself, right? Like
Okay.
you can say that actually no, Islam doesn't say this. I'll be like, good, you're taking that interpretation, fantastic, but like when hit with the cold hard facts, the way that people live their life, the way that people are forced to take the interpretation, it's
Yeah.
not yours. So just stay out of the way when we're talking about the other thing, unless you want to go and help us and spread your version of Islam. Otherwise you're not really participating in the conversation, you're shutting it down.
Yeah, I can see how that, yeah, especially if it's in one of those conversations and they're kind of interjecting. That is a very particular thing where, yeah, I'm with you on that one. I'm talking more in like people that you might meet. But so in these situations, especially in the spaces where you and possibly Miro 55 is with, people who come and try to interject themselves and try to say, well, actually, I believe this. It's like, yeah, but that's not the mainstream view and that's not what we're talking about. I get you. That can, yeah,
Mm.
that's
Yeah,
not
it's
helpful. In fact, that's not
you have to
constructive in
like
the least.
spend less energy trying to convince that person that their belief is wrong or inconsistent with Islam. Just let them do their thing, but
Hmm.
don't let that be a distraction. Instead of pouring your energy into trying to convince them that their view is actually un-Islamic, which it often is,
Hmm.
because it's frustrating because you expect consistency from them, right? Just put them
Mm,
aside and focus on who are you actually trying to have this conversation with, or who is your audience when you're talking about this. If
yeah.
if the debate is this Islamic or not, that's a whole different kind of debate, which you didn't sign up for initially, right? Like you didn't sign up to prove that Islam is misogynistic, and then this progressive Muslim tells you it's not, and then now you're debating that. You're usually protesting that it is misogynistic, and that's how women live their lives, and they are suffering. So
Mm,
that side
I
debate
see.
doesn't really add anything. Like anyway,
Yeah.
that's my take
Yeah.
on it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the context that you brought up is really important because I hadn't really considered it in that light. And yeah, that's different. That's the whole thing. Yeah, I got you.
Finn Jake is asking, do you have a view, asking me, but you'll answer that next as well. Do you have a view of the stars from your place? What do you feel when looking up at the starry night? Um, Funny enough, a few months ago, I stargazed for a night, and I saw for the first time a shooting star, as they're called, which is, just debris from space that burns up and disappears. Um, I saw two, actually, at least two that night, and it was incredible because I'd never seen them before in person, and
Never.
I'd never seen such a clear sky. Um, and funny thing is, as soon as I saw one, I started laughing and thinking about how this is supposedly a missile, hitting a devil because he was eavesdropping on what Allah was saying. And then I got annoyed because it took me out of the moment of contemplation and enjoying the scene to think about nonsensical myths that bring up a lot
Wow.
more than just, it's a funny story. Anyway, back to the contemplation. That's not how my thought process goes. I was annoyed that there was so much baggage tied to such a beautiful and interesting event. And I was annoyed that someone else sitting next to me who doesn't have that baggage could enjoy it much better than I did. Um, and even if I wasn't at the moment ex-Muslim, if I saw this as a Muslim, I would immediately, and I'm talking about myself, not any Muslim, I'm talking about myself. I remember the verse because I had to memorize it. I would immediately remember the verse, and it would bring up the turmoil that was inside me. Do I actually believe this? So that's
Mm.
something that's, looking back at my childhood and adulthood, early adulthood, religion was a distressing topic, not because I hated praying or because I didn't want to do these things. It was a constant reminder of how nothing makes sense. It's so difficult when you're force fed that this makes sense, this makes sense. You have to eventually understand that it makes sense. And everyone around me is so thoughtless about it. They're like, yeah, it makes sense. Anyway, moving on, just because they don't deeply think about it. And it was troubling to me that every time I'm faced with religion, I have to try to avoid deeply thinking about it because I still believed at the time, and I just didn't have the capacity in my life to deep dive into religion and realize that it's not real and go through that whole crisis at the time. So this is years after I left religion. I'm talking months ago. And I was still annoyed that because that thought was incepted in my mind when I was so young, I don't know if I'll ever forget it. That millions of people genuinely believe, or I was supposed to believe, that this is how God targets jinn. This is how, um, if for those who don't know, there's a verse about how God is basically telling knowledge of the future, or like communicating with the angels, and these jinn, these devils, these mythical creatures are trying to eavesdrop, and then when God catches them, he sends one of these missiles, to hit them. Um, so yeah, when I look up at the stars, if I can get rid of all that stuff, if I'm able to push all of that aside, I think about how incredible it would be if there was other life out there. I mean, all of these stars are corpses. We're looking at stars that had died a long, long time ago, and their light is only arriving to us now. We have no idea what's beyond us, in terms of not just life, but we can't see that far, actually, when you think about it. We only see into the past. There could be life evolving as we speak. There could be another civilization looking at the corpse of the star that used to be here. A lot of wondrous thoughts like that come to mind. And I do feel a sense of relief that I no longer have to grapple with all that, while at the same time forcing the belief that Earth is specifically special because of the Allah story. So there is a bit of relief in that. Anyway, what do you think when you look up at the stars?
Mm. I spend I spend enough time in big cities with light pollution where I can't always see them. So when I'm somewhere where I can, that's fantastic. I have this app on my phone. I think it's called Stellarium, something like that. But you pull it up and you either point it near the sun or you point it somewhere. It orients itself, and then it overlays all the constellations and it moves in real time. And so whatever star you see, you can kind of move your phone and then learn what star it is and what else is around it. And like, oh yeah, I can see that one and that one. So for me, it's like an exploration. Like you said, this wonderment, like what else is out there? I remember when I was in high school in ninth grade, we had these legit like telescopes and tripod things. And you and a partner, your lab partner, would check it out for the weekend. And your parents would take you outside the little town we lived in to like one of the parks or field or whatever, and you set it up with a red flashlight and you just look up, and you had this book. You had to like draw what you saw on the moon, or like tick off that you saw certain things in certain seasons. Your parents had to sign it like this was graded. It was so cool. You could look through this thing and see in detail like places you'll never go, but you can see it. Like, wow, it's pretty great.
Um, this also got me thinking about how I might have told this story one time on a live stream, but a couple of years ago, I took a partner to a trampoline place, for fun. Those places that
Yeah.
have a bunch of trampolines and like foam pits where you can jump in and stuff like that. And I had been an ex-Muslim at that point, right? But still, all these thoughts are often in your head. I saw one of those slack ropes where you walk on it and you
Oh
try to
yeah.
balance on it and not fall off into the, you're not in danger or anything. It's like foam underneath you.
Yeah. It's like a tightrope kind of.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's fun, but I looked at it and I chuckled, and then my partner was asking, what's up? And I explained that what I thought of was the rope on the day of judgment that you walk over hell. And if you're a good person, you're going to run across it. If you're a bad person, you're going to fall in, and the rope is as thin as a hair. And I was laughing at the time because of the ridiculousness of it, but it stirs up a lot of emotion about how upset I was that someone told me this stupid myth as a child and just left me and was like, "Okay, now you're done memorizing Quran. Let's go do homework and then continue with your life." Like, what? And I tried to understand at the time, even all these exaggerations, such silly exaggerations. The hair is as, I mean, the line is as thin as a hair. Okay, how do you walk on a hair? Like talk to me like a reasonable person. How do you walk on a hair? Why are you teaching me all this nonsense? So not only is it physically nonsense, you can't walk on something as thin as a hair, um, but also these concepts of your test is how well you walk across the rope, and there's torture underneath and blah blah blah, and do all the stuff that you need to do. I was upset that these concepts stick with you throughout life if you really believed in them. And I was upset that as we're speaking, some kid is being taught that at the moment. Um, and I'm
Yeah.
upset that we take these ideas seriously and we just say, you believe whatever you believe. No, at some point, you're harming children by teaching them this stuff. It's not just about the spiritual. It's not just about what gets you through the day and thinking about your dead relatives and seeing them in the afterlife. You're terrorizing people by teaching them that the nonsensical, the things that don't make sense, that things that we've never seen make sense. And then who knows how that affects them. And we just have to pretend and be civil and say, oh, you know what, people have different theories about what happens. That's not just a theory about what happens. That's a whole narrative. That's a story that somebody wrote. um, so it's upsetting to me that every now and then I'm reminded of these things, and though I am past them, I don't believe that I'm going to be walking across a thin hair and above a fiery pit. I'm sad that there are people learning that as we speak.
I kind of think it would be interesting if you did little check-ins every now and then when these type of things come up, like the stargazing thing you talked about, or this one with the hair and the slack line, where it's like, this is how pervasive it can be. This is how deep it goes. Here's some, like, just kind of the things that adults thought were throwaways to me that impact my life X number of years later. Because when we're told fairy tales and when we're told about the Santa myth, shh, it's not real. We eventually get older and we find that out, and we learn the difference between fantasy and reality. And while there are people who absolutely believe that to be a literal truth, um, I don't know that that many who are practicing would say like, oh yeah, this is actually going to happen, or whether it's more of a like, hey, if you're weighed down with your sins, you will fall, versus if you are light from being, godly, then you will. That's kind of how I would take it, because I think a lot of the things, when taken literally, like you said, are absolutely ridiculous. Um, but
But you're an adult
yeah,
who learned that. And
well, yes, and that's
yeah.
the thing. Why is this taught from childhood? Like, whoa. I remember once I read about a culture who allows children to name themselves at a certain age versus parents naming them, or they have like a placeholder name. It's very interesting, the different ways that places operate. But yeah, I think it'd be super interesting if you had little check-ins every now and then, 5-10 minutes, like, hey, this is the thing that happened. This is what it made me think of, and here's my thoughts on it. I would come and watch that. The like, the ripple effect series, or whatever you want to call it, the trickle down.
That's a good idea. Um, and that's part of why people ask me, why do you make jokes about religion? Like, it's disrespectful to make jokes about Islam or draw this character or that character. Um, if I make a joke out of that situation, then every time I think of it, I'm gonna laugh. And maybe people who haven't, like, it hasn't really settled in and hurt them yet, they can see it and laugh before it becomes something scary. Because
Yeah.
it is a funny concept, and unlike in Christianity and other religions where one could say this verse is metaphorical, it means, you don't want to be weighed down by your sins and fall into damnation or whatever. In Islam, we are supposed to believe that this stuff is literal, you know, um, especially
Yeah.
especially if you really really learn this stuff as a religious person. I get upset at Muslims who don't learn religion and then point at people like myself and say, well, I wasn't traumatized by it, that's your problem. Well, I'm
Mm.
sorry, it's because you don't think. Like, I wish I was that. I wish I was what was it, ignorance is bliss. I wish I was that ignorant. I wish I didn't think as deeply as you as I did. um
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that I am the problem here. It's like when people point out like this right here, why do you always talk about it? They say that. Um, if
What
you,
religion?
yeah,
That, because it's had a huge effect on your life.
and
And
on
even though
other
you're not in
people's
it
life.
anymore, it's still affecting your life. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
I think, I got to be honest, I do worry sometimes that you take on a little too much that's outside yourself. And I think it's very, very well meaning and very meaningful. But I worry that sometimes you put yourself in a position that harms you more than helps others. And I'm kind of curious what other viewers might think of that as well. But for people who come on and say, this is offensive, you can't say this, I don't like what you're saying, go somewhere else. It's a choice to come here. And if you don't like it, you don't have to come here. The content will still exist, but you don't have to consume it. It's a choice. And if you're here choosing to be in the comments, then you are choosing to have this insult in your life, and you are choosing your own unhappiness. So have a look in the mirror about that. This stuff, like when you talk about the humor, if it's healing you and it's especially healing someone else, and someone's offended, too bad, sorry, go away.
I mean, they say, okay, what if the humor is hurting me, the religious person? The thing is, this is not state-sponsored TV. This is not
Yeah.
forced down your throat. This is not, hey, this is today's news. Also, your prophet sucks. No, it's
Mm-hmm.
you're seeking this out. You can very easily, click the not interested button, and the algorithm will tell you, okay, cool, I'll give you more stuff that you like. Here's more
Yeah.
Dawah videos. It's
Mm-hmm.
very easy to do that. Even if you, and here's the thing, like, you see the amount of mentions of religion in everyday media, favorable mentions, is huge. So from the other point of view, I have to sit through all of these, or someone who could be, for example, triggered by these mentions of religion, has to accept it as a daily part of life. But
Yeah.
you're upset that you go out of your way and find something that upsets you, and you want that to not exist at all. It's the world that we live in, and no one's forcing you to be here. But this is just to this all stemmed from someone asking me, "What do you think of when you look at the stars?" And I think this should give you an idea of how deeply ingrained religion can be. It can taint something as innocent and enjoyable as looking at the stars. Um, some people look and they think wonder about God. The others look and think, why don't you make any semblance of sense? What's
Yeah.
wrong with me? That's what I used to think.
Yeah.
Um, um, okay, let's see more questions. Nazone, thanks for the super chat. Well, this is not a question per se. Says, I visited Dome of the Rock as a kid, the place where Muhammad ascended to heaven, allegedly. When I put my hand in it, it smelled like perfume, and people lined up hands in and smell it. I learned they sprayed it. Yeah, not surprised there. But
There's
there
no
are like,
miracle, we'll make one.
yeah. And see, someone who does that, they think that they're doing it for the greater good. Like you're giving those people faith and it's good somehow, but it's deceptive still. This question is for you. Did you ever meet other Muslim converts during your time as a Muslim? Was there any commonalities you saw in them and any reason as to reasons why they converted?
Well, did I ever see any other converts? Yes. I don't know about commonalities as to why they converted, because a lot of people, you can kind of tell when they tell their story that there's something they're slightly leaving out, or that they've slightly edited or like reframed. And that's fine, because I don't think that that's like deceptive. I think that that's just when you look back on something, you see it differently. But, I'm not going to comment on that. But a trend I did notice amongst converts is that the ones who stay in for a long time tend to be the ones who go super hardcore. The ones who are like, the men, I need to have my short pants. Or the women who go like full abaya and like jilbab and everything. Like white European American born, for example, because I live in the US, so that's my frame of reference. But like they are full in. And it's people would say the same about me. They would say, how did you go from this to wearing hijab? And I can talk about that. But when I hear the way that they talk and the things that they say, and I'm like, how could you have grown up in this area and stay that? Like, what? I don't get it. And it wouldn't be that I necessarily would say they're wrong. It's just kind of, I didn't understand how you could go so far over and so deep. These would be the ones who are busting out the God phrases in their everyday life when they don't speak Arabic at all, but the Arabic words they know, mashallah, alhamdulillah, all this stuff. And it's in their everyday English conversation with other people. Or the content creators, again, it's usually women that go on these channels and they're like, in a sentence, like 500 lilahs. I'm like, I get that you're ecstatic. I get it. But like, it almost makes me a little nervous, honestly, because it seems so ecstatic that it's like, what is the influence that got you there? I don't get it. So that was something that kind of made me uneasy at times. And it wasn't that I thought, ooh, I should be like this. This is how converts should be. It was more like, why do you have to be 100%? Why can't you find a comfortable middle? And it kind of made me doubt and say, am I wrong that I think that I can straddle this line? Yeah, it was weird. It was weird for sure.
Do you think that the longer that one remains a convert, the more they're gonna turn into that person?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think I have enough evidence or timeline or data to really draw a judgment on that. I have no idea.
Still got a lot more questions. Khalid is saying, when Islam oppresses women, why do Muslim women defend Islam fiercely? Keep in mind, like Rachel only, or Kyla, only has a short window of experience, right? A few years. So you're answering from that point of view. Did you see that? Like, did you see women who were oppressed but defending it fiercely, and why?
I did it, in fact, yes, because as a woman, if you admit that you are being discriminated against, that is some cognitive dissonance. So for me, it was like, no, let me prove to you all the reasons why this is not only okay, but better. Because if it's not, then I'm wrong. So for converts versus women who are raised Muslim, I don't know what their reasoning may be. That is just what I know from my experience. Um, I think a lot of times there is that compartmentalizing or potentially kind of unawareness of certain parts where, if you brought this into the forefront, you might think and speak differently. But yeah, I think a lot of it is just you get to a point where you're living your life the way that you can, and anything that would shake or change that would be kind of fundamental to your life and therefore pretty destructive. So why do people defend it fiercely? Because it's integral to who they are at that point. That's why.
I remember a commenter or a caller saying that if I stopped and admitted that this is not good for me, then I would be utterly defeated because I can't do anything about it. I can't escape my situation. I can't restructure my entire life. So my best bet was to find ways to make sense of it and double down on that. Um, that's what they said. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another question. Interesting. Tacos is asking again, when you were a Muslim, how did being Muslim shape your voting record? Were you conservative, liberal, or something else?
I've always been fairly liberal. I think the whole voting system, including the electoral college, the bipartisan, I think it's all crap. I think it's great that we have a democracy in name, but I think that one vote is not one vote. But no, I've always been fairly progressive on most things, especially social issues.
And that didn't change when you joined Islam, and that didn't change when you left Islam.
Nope.
Because you didn't change your views on the LGBTQ, for example, when you joined Islam. So you wouldn't
No.
have voted against their rights in any sense, right?
No.
Yeah. Let's see. Pancake is asking, do you guys think it's possible that time runs forward and backwards and doesn't actually have a starting point?
I don't know about forwards and backwards, but I don't think it's a line. I think it's all kind of a mixy mix like this, and sometimes little points touch, and that's what deja vu is.
Interesting.
I don't think that we're time traveling. Don't get me wrong there. I'm not going science fiction on this today, but that's what I think.
I think I can only perceive time as linear because that's how I perceive it. Uh, that's it. I don't have any theories about how time actually is. If there is actually an objective measure of that, it's just our perception of time passing. I don't know. I don't really have an answer for that. Another question: after your deconversion, did you struggle with doing haram things?
Yep. So there were a couple things I was super nervous about when I initially deconverted. That was a Saturday, and I remember I was in a whole state, and there was maybe half a dozen things that I identified that I was really freaking out about. And one of them was I can't wear hijab anymore because it identifies me as a member of a group that I'm no longer a member of and do not want to represent because it is antithetical to some of my beliefs. So I was like, well, shit, Monday I got to go to work. What am I going to do? I am not ready to show my head. That is too much. That is too soon. Plus, it was cold weather. But it's just like, I can't. I can't. Men will see me. And I was like, wait, why do I care? Very weird. But the first thing I did was the next day, the Sunday, I went to the hair cutter place. I was like, all right, this is going to happen. So I'm going to get, instead of just a regular buzz, I'm going to get something carved in the side, look real cool, go to work, feel sweet. Here we go. Went there, turned out the hair cutter was a man. So it was like, oh, man touched me for the first time in years. That's not from my family and not my, at the time, spouse. This is weird. Like, but I chose to put myself in those positions. I was like, I have to do this. I am made to do difficult things. I choose the difficult things. I choose the thing that is uncomfortable because I will be better for it. I will be more. I will grow from it. So did I struggle with doing haram things? Hell yeah. Um, Eating non-halal meat was kind of weird. I kind of noticed it for a while. Pork took a long time.
But you had eaten pork before converting, right?
Yeah, but I'd become so aware of making sure it wasn't in what I was eating, especially when I was living abroad and it was one of the main foods that people ate. I was so focused on it was a routine, it was a habit. It was like second nature, like breathing almost like, oh, does this have this in it? Does this have this in it? Um, so that was a weird one. And then I remember one time when I ate a sandwich that I didn't know had a sausage patty in it, and I bit it and I was like, oh, what's this? I was like, oh, yum. And it was like the first time I'd eaten pork, and I didn't realize it after. It was the first time after that I'd eaten pork, and I didn't realize it. And it was just like, it was so weird. So weird. I can't even describe it. It was so strange. And then also just about not needing to speak before and after I eat, for example, not needing to care about which hand I'm using, and realizing that I never really cared about that to begin with and always thought it was dumb because we have soap. Like, duh. So yeah, just a lot of weird shit. A lot of weird shit. Very interesting to notice how, in for me, what a relatively short time span it was, um, how deep I could get, and therefore for someone like you who was raised this way, I'm like, holy shit, like I can't even begin to understand.
Well, is there anything that's still residual from that? Something that you still struggle with?
Hmm. Not that I can think of at the moment. There's still things I notice every now and then, but nothing that I would consider a struggle at this point. But who knows? Tomorrow, maybe I'll be proven wrong.
Secular Spirit is saying a non-Muslim relative once got food poisoning from pork, so I believed for a long time that pork was dangerous.
Well, if you
Okay.
undercook it, it is.
Isn't all meat, I guess.
Yes, but that's not what we're talking about, is it now?
Yeah. Let's see more questions here. So, question for Aladdin, I guess for me. Do you ever think Islam will be way more openly criticized as Christianity in your lifetime? Yes. Yeah. To the same exact extent as Christianity? No. But more than it is now? Yeah, I would say so. What do you think? Do you have any thoughts to add to that?
I think we're on our way. I think the uprising in Iran is bringing about something. Have you seen about these athletes recently who went on the podium without their hijab on? One of them did it in Tehran.
Mm-hmm. I haven't looked up where she is right now. I heard news that she was missing for a while. Honestly, it was very distressing to me to keep up with. So I hope she's doing okay. I hope nothing.
So do I. It's very distressing, especially when I hear about children who I see them on TikTok, for example, literal children, 9, 10 years old, running and like bopping the turbans off of these mullahs or whatever,
Mhm.
and then running down the street and shouting out the slogan. I don't know it in Farsi, but the what is it? The women, life, freedoms in a different order, perhaps. And it's a lot of the Gen Zers who are knowingly putting out content, knowing that they and their family will potentially, likely, I don't know, be harmed if not more. And I'm so sad that this is how it is happening, but I'm so happy that something is finally happening, because what's the expression? Freedom isn't free. Thanks, Team America. But it looks like this is the price. And I just hope that the price that is being paid is worth the value that will come from it.
And I hope that when everyone does it, it's harder to punish everyone. So I hope it,
Yeah, strength in numbers. Hell yeah.
yeah. Someone asked a question I can't find anymore, but I was
Okay.
hesitant to ask you this. Do you think that Islam is a cult?
Oh, do I think it's a cult?
We can skip over the
I think
question if
no,
you don't.
no, no. Just skip. You're so funny. Um, I think all religions have the potential to be a cult, because I think there are um, people who are prone to hysterical heights all around the world. And I think that I think that it's more about not a religion in and of itself and what it preaches or contains, although there are some that are very just, they are straight up cults. But I think that with the devotion, the dedication, the blind faith that some people have, the unyielding blind faith, it can be that. I think with the spreading of the message that goes on, religions can be that. And I don't say Islam exclusively. I think all religions have that potential. Even the ones that claim to be like the gentle way, the meditative way, there's always extremists who are like, yes, this is the thing I have to tell everybody. And I get it. You're excited. You found the value. You want to share it. You need to chill out, though. You're freaking everyone out. So is it a cult on the whole? I don't have a judgment on that. I don't have an opinion. I don't think that I have even a place to say. But are there people who treat it like one, who follow it like one, who promote it like one? Yes.
Okay. I'm not going to answer that just because I've spoken about it before, and I don't want to go on tangents, but thank you for answering that. And here's another question for you. Phobos the Wicked is asking, what did you think of Islamic Paradise? Didn't you think it was too shallow, or did you have your own interpretation?
You mean about all the descriptions of the rivers and the fruits and all this shit?
Yeah.
And all the dark-eyed virgins or whatever they are, the houris? I think that sounds nice, but I think that my life has value far beyond tangible things. I think that I think that there's only certain ways you can describe something that you can't see. And so we have to use terms that we can understand. But I think that what would potentially be accessible there is beyond that description. But I don't know. I mean, it's supposed to sound nice, but it also sounds hella boring. So I don't know. It's not a one and done answer. I don't need a prize in order to do the right thing. That's what I think. I think all the descriptions of the punishments and the prizes are for people who can't otherwise find conscience. And I think for some people, they can't understand how to set themselves rules or guidelines within which to operate morally without a religion. And so they need these descriptions. If you do what we say, you will get this thing. If you don't do what we say, this is what's going to happen to you. And I just don't, that's not how I'm motivated. So yeah,
Well,
sounds great, but also kind of empty. And if it was so great anyway, then like, why do I need to be tempted along with this carrot?
thing is, you said that it sounds boring to you, and part of why it does is because you don't live in a desert where you have, no front yard kind of thing, no green spaces, and that maybe it would have sounded more appealing then. So in the same vein, I'm wondering what description would have sounded appealing to you.
I don't think we can talk about that on this channel.
Okay, so it's not child friendly, I guess.
No. After I've
Okay.
dropped all my F bombs and my S bombs, we're going to reserve that one. Let me put it this way. I have a very vast imagination.
But so in the same way, Islam appeals to the sexual urges of men. Had Islam been more inclusive of women, do you think it would have been more convincing to you or more appealing to you?
No, because I can have all of that here and now. I just have to know how to ask for it and who to ask. That's part of how I live my life now. I get what I want.
But what if you could have more and more
I
intensely?
can. I can. That's the whole point. I can have more. I do get more every day. I mean, look what arrived. Hello. I haven't even touched my breakfast cookie. And I know these are very like feeble examples, kind of like cutesy, but I do 100% assure you, I not only get what I get everything I need. I get a lot of what I want. And then having learned how to know and ask for what I want means that I just keep getting it more. I do something these days where when I'm going about my daily life, I don't try to like exert my will onto people, but I'll ask them for stuff. If there's something I want, I'll just ask. Because guess what? People love to help other people. I love to help other people. When people want something, it makes me feel so good and I want to give it to them. Other people want to do that for me too. And a lot of times we just don't ask. So I'm going to be the person that asks. I'm going to get what I want, make the other person feel good. Hell yeah, I can have more. Join me. It's wonderful.
Well, I got maybe one more question from the
Yep.
comments. First, thanks, Fred, for the super sticker. I appreciate it. I wish it would show the sticker on screen, but it doesn't, unfortunately. But it was a very cute one. Someone is saying, where to go? Someone's vibing very hard. Potato Apostate is saying, I'm vibing very hard with Kyla.
Potato apostato. I say potato, you say potato apostato.
You say apostate, I say apostat. Here's a question from Shristi. Why are Western women converting to Islam in the first place? I thought they were the most educated women in the world. I don't know who said most educated women in the world. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but the rest of that.
I mean, I'm college educated, if that counts. I went to a pretty good high school, but why? I don't know. I mean, women has a plural in it. I can only talk about myself, so I don't know. Yeah, you might have an idea on this one though.
I can't say I do. I mean, I have some theories, but it's the ones that people know, that some convert because of partnership, because they got to be with the person who's a Muslim and they can't marry them unless they convert. That happens very
Yep.
often. But it
Mhm.
doesn't mean that every woman who converts is because she found someone. That's a stereotype.
I mean, it's founded. It's absolutely founded, and it's the one that I got the most often. Oh, you converted for your husband. I'm like, no, actually, I understand why you think that, but no. Yeah.
There's also, like, I've seen this on a personal level, and someone reached out to me, a friend, and said, "Can you talk to my friend? She's joining Islam and she's going deeper and deeper, and I can tell that she joined because she's troubled, not because she believes. Like, eventually she believes, but she was in an abusive position, an abusive household, and now she's like diving deeper and deeper. And like you said, the kind who starts involving Islam in every single discussion, wearing more and more layers, all that stuff." I said I can't intervene with that. Like, it's not my place to save her or whatever. Like, she has to figure her
Yeah.
stuff out, or people in her
Yeah.
life need to, have a conversation with her. It's hard really to tell. I wish there was more research done about this topic, but more importantly about just Muslims in general, not just the
Yeah.
ones who convert.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of instances of, correct me if I'm wrong. Again, I'm not a woman. I'm not a white woman in the West, but I see a lot of want to affect social change in a good way. And part of that is having an affinity for certain minorities or wanting to understand them better. Um, and then finding yourself involved in that world and feeling like I could be a part of this, like this is not scary, like I was told the
Yeah.
outsiders would say,
Yeah.
and then overcompensating and feeling like this is some kind of spiritual exotic experience that you can have, and that
Yeah.
you're being a better person by trying to be in touch with a minority. I've gotten that vibe from some of them, and then eventually they end up leaving Islam when they realize what they signed up for. But
It,
that's not
it kind
always
of
true.
sounds like a less detailed version of what I've said, honestly, because, like I said, I started with an academic interest where I was like, there's no way that what I'm seeing and hearing and reading is correct. Let me learn a little more. And then as I was concurrently on my own path of seeking and discovering, it kind of just, it was synchronous. It happened. Um, and I think there's a lot of this information about the discrimination against women in Islam, but there's this counter argument of no, there's all these rights, and this is the situation at the time, and the benefits, and what happened, and blah 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 blah. But like you said, once you get in and you find out how it is in the day to day, yeah, you see the two extremes, then you see where the middle is, and then a lot of times you find that the middle is not as middle as you thought, and you go one of two directions, and I went this direction.
Well, the last question I have for you, and it's going to be very bluntly worded. Do you think
Yay.
white guilt has anything to do with it, with
For me
conversions?
or for others or what?
Both for you, or for have you come across examples where you thought that could have been a factor?
Hmm.
And to explain to the audience what I mean, white guilt is when, I'm talking about America, for example. White people who feel like they're responsible for crimes that their people have done broadly, or their ancestors, or the consequences that non-white people have been facing for generations because of certain actions, and be it slavery, be it colonialism, all that kind of stuff. And they feel personally responsible, or like they can do something or should do something about that. But I guess when people call it white guilt is when it gets to a point where you're unfairly punishing yourself or blaming yourself for, things you haven't done. That's my understanding of white guilt. Is that correct?
I mean, I think it's going to be just an understanding for me as well, because it's not something I deal with a ton. Um, and the reason I say that is, I've had that come up, and there's certain situations I've been in my life where I say to myself, like, why is it that I'm feeling this way? And when I look under all the explanations, and I'm like, oh, it's because I'm white and this is a non-white space, or it's because I'm white and person of color is having this issue and I feel for them. But I also know that although I might be able to help them, I'm not a part of the group. And so what is my place? Where am I able to be? Where is comfortable for them? Where is permissible? Because professionally, especially, I've had jobs where that has been part of my job function. So because I think I've had to deal with it quite overtly in that way, plus the fact that, living in the US, my parents are immigrants. And so I have zero ties to what happened here, in history, and generally just kind of a view of, yeah, that sucks and it happened, but I wasn't there, and I'm going to just do what I'm going to do now in the current circumstance and see how I can just make the world a better place. I really don't feel anything of white guilt that brought me to Islam. I really don't. Um, and it's interesting because when I was covered, it was rare for people to guess that I was white or, European descent, even though I'm pasty. So a lot of times people would ask me, are you from Lebanon? Are you from Saudi Arabia? Are you from here? Are you from here? I'm like, no, I'm from the US. And sorry that that's boring. But it was kind of like when I was covered, I wasn't white in certain places, or I wasn't approached as if I was white. And it was very interesting to notice the difference in the interactions and to say, oh, here's a little piece of my privilege that now I can see what the difference is. And so it was kind of taking a step on the other side, but living abroad was the biggest eye opener for me. And living abroad, uncovered versus covered, huge difference. Um, so yeah, I don't think that white guilt played into it for me. I discovered later on there was a chance for me to examine and reflect on my position in the world as a white person, but it's not what brought me there. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I'm curious. You said that you're approached as if you're not white. What does that
Yeah.
entail?
They would approach the scarf. People would approach me differently. They would speak to me differently. A lot of times they wouldn't speak to me necessarily, or only Muslim men would speak to me when I was covered. Not only, but I'm general terms, general trends I noticed, um, that Muslim men would see me as white, but everybody else did not. And I would get the creepiest stuff said to me when I was covered, said by Muslim men. Try that one on.
That is confusing. So,
No, it's not. A bunch of men living in a repressed religion where they're told to avert their gaze, and then they find somebody who comes with this kind of crazy ass energy and says what they want but looks like that. Just the other day, the picture that I sent you to use on the preview card for this, the one where I'm like loosely wrapped, it was a chilly day and it was also sunny. That's why I was dressed like that, but sure is misleading. I had it as a profile picture on some Facebook group and I was replying to someone's comment and they greeted me in English letters, but salam alaikum. And this was not a religious discussion. And so I replied and I was like, wa alaikum salam, just to let you know, I'm a murtad, I'm an apostate. I am not Muslim. And they said, oh, okay, can I private message you? I was like, all right. And I thought maybe they were in a similar situation, whatever. We're having the most boring chat ever. And then eventually I say, hey, why did you message me, by the way? They said, oh, I thought you might be Muslim. I'm like, I fucking told you I'm not. Sorry if I bothered you. And then rose emoji. I'm like, oh God, all of you men with your rose emojis, like get out of my DMs. You have no game. But that's the thing. They're raised to not interact. Men and women who are raised in Islam, I think, are raised to not interact with each other. They don't know how. There's a lot of mystery. There's a lot of secrecy. There's a lot of shame. There's a lot of guilt. So hell yeah, when they have a door open from somebody who's open to humans and is like, hey, I'm okay to talk to. I'm not going to freak out at you. Yeah, all of it comes out. Absolutely, it comes out. I don't find it surprising at all. I find it very predictable and very telling.
So you being a Muslim or Muslim appearing or wearing a hijab or whatever is an opener for them, is what you're saying?
Yeah, because they're like, ooh, she's in my group, and I'm gonna say the things that are on my mind now, or the things that have been in my head to say. And yeah, like if I had saved any of my DMs, the goldmine treasure trove that I could offer you right now. Yeah, anybody else, any other women, especially covered women who might be watching this, I very strongly invite you in the DMs to let us know if you've got any, I mean in the comments, if you've got any creepy DMs, hijabi women, creepy Muslim men who have not been socialized to talk to women and have some urges that they have not been able to talk about with anyone else and they feel very able to talk about with you. Let us know. Name and shame. Change the game.
I'm not super surprised. I was talking to another ex-convert, and
Mm-hmm.
she had been a Muslim for even longer than you have, I think.
Okay.
And she showed me some screenshots. I didn't ask for them, but she showed me of I can't name any names, but some very well-known Muslim YouTuber, one of
Mm-hmm.
those Dawah people. And this
Yeah.
is how you know, like, I'm not trying to start drama because this would be amazing drama if I could, or if I wanted to. But anyway, he knows her backstory. He knows her like through connections, like on a personal level, I think. And he's still talking to her after she left Islam, and she is, dressed in a way that he shouldn't even be looking at her profile picture. Like he's
Yep.
dressed in a way that is, she's dressed in a way that is very sinful for him to, like, a good Muslim, so to speak, should stop that communication and not even look at her profile picture. But he continues
Yep.
to talk and make like suggestions and basically either explicitly flirt or kind of like, hey, why don't you just like join Islam and marry me and stuff. And
Mm-hmm. I got a couple names pop into mind. I got some theories. Yeah. Uh-huh.
and don't speculate, because I'm never gonna say. And
Hold on. No. My lips are
I
sealed.
it's funny because I could be having a conversation with this person in the next few months. I haven't spoken to them, but I can see that happening, and it just be in my mind, you're a dirty sleaze bag. And I can't tell people, and you're pretending that you're not a dirty sleaze bag because you have this pious label.
Yep.
And no, it's not Nauman Ali Khan. Everyone knows that, what happened there. But yeah, it's very interesting to me, converts specifically, because you're seen as somewhere in between, white girl, loose white girl, and also potential Muslima, like, or
Yeah.
potential good girl that I can tame, kind of thing. That's how they see it.
Yeah.
It's like they're best of both worlds.
Well, it's the Madonna whore. Like that is the thing. I'm not being cute. Like
Yeah.
this is research. This is proven. Like Madonna whore. Yeah. Like it's a super hot, halal in the streets, haram in the sheets, and they're like, ooh, the things that I would do to her and she would do to me. And a lot of times my answer is, you wouldn't fucking know what to do with me. I would break you. Um, just it is though. It's so it. I'm surprised that at first you said you were surprised. I was like, "Are you serious?" And now you say this, I'm like, "That's more like it." This is exactly what happens.
I mean, I just forgot about it. I presumed that Muslim men would approach you more respectfully because of the hijab or whatever, but
No, no,
they
no.
kind of see you as like,
In public, sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
But in the DMs, that's when no one is watching, not even Allah. And see, that's the thing. That's one more thing about cognitive dissonance. If you really believe that Allah is like watching and there's angels on your shoulders, literally reading your DMs, um, how do you pause that momentarily and do the haram thing? Like, are your hormones stronger than your belief in Allah? I don't know. It's not consistent, but that's interesting. Yeah. I wish that we could name and shame those people, but it is what it is.
I mean, people in the comments are going to do what they're going to do. Nothing I can do about it.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Well, thank you for sharing all of that with us and
Hmm.
catching up with you. Is there
Absolutely.
anything that I didn't go over that you wanted to talk about, or anything that you wanted to ask me?
Oh man. Um, Ask you. That's a good one. Anything you didn't go over? No, because I came here without an objective. I just wanted to have a chat. Thanks.
Yeah.
Things to ask you. Hmm, what's one thing that you wish you had in your life that you feel you could achieve in the not too distant future that would change things for you for the better in some way?
Something I wish I had in my life.
Yeah. And it could be a thing, it could be a process, it could be a person, like whatever, however you interpret the question. But what is something you wish you had in your life that would change it for the better?
Two wildly different answers. One, a winning lottery ticket, because
Yeah.
then I wouldn't stress at all about the money, and then I would, just in my day-to-day life, I would have the ability to do anything. Um, it's not even that money changes how I make content in any way. It doesn't. But
Hmm.
there is the stress in the back of my mind that I hope that I have enough time to achieve everything that I've wanted to do before I have to switch to something else, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so that would be nice. Just a safety net is what I'm thinking about, not really
Yeah. Yeah.
anything else.
Hmm.
Um, but at a very different kind of answer, I wish I had control over my focus and attention, because I can work very well on anything if I'm very interested in it and I can focus. But I have very little to no control over my focus, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So if I can have that superpower that other people just call discipline, or, I don't know, how people just regularly operate, that would be nice. Which is funny because 2 years ago on TikTok, a viewer, one of the OG viewers, um, she might be watching this at the moment. She sent me a message privately and said, "Hey, I think you might have ADHD." I'm like, "No, I don't think so." And then months later, not because she told me anything, I was like, I came across that, um, and I looked into it. I'm like, "Holy crap!" She diagnosed me like just by watching my live streams, and
Yeah.
yeah, so that is one thing I wish I am more in control of my attention and focus. That would
Yeah.
vastly improve my life and my content and everything. Yeah.
I'm right there with you on that one. Like the work I do, a lot of it is self-directed, and because I work for myself, it means I'm only accountable to myself, which means my deadlines are my own and I can move them whenever I want. And a deadline is highly motivational for me and makes me work really well. Like I was the 9 o'clock the night before essay writer, first draft, no outline, just bang it out and get an A person. And it turns out that in school where there's structure, that's fine. But in life, when I have to make my own structure, it's awful. And yeah, when I get into hyper focus, I will go for hours and not use the bathroom and not eat and not do anything and just like bang out the work. But I don't get to choose when I focus and I don't get to choose what I focus on. That sucks.
Yep. But hey,
I
I
got
was
you.
supposed to publish a video 2 days ago and I still haven't finished editing it. And now I can't finish and edit it today and like publish it today, because then like that's too soon with the live stream. So hopefully within the next couple of days, there will be a video out there that everyone can watch, a short video for your short attention spans. Though those who are here, you've been watching for 2 hours. Thank you very much. That's, a very long attention
A
span.
marathon.
Yeah. So thank you once again for joining us for this catch up,
Yeah.
Shisha. And yeah, thank you everyone in the audience for joining. And unless you have anything else you want to say, um, as always, everybody, think critically and think for yourself.
The intention, you don't want to know the truth. You're not seeking the truth. So
And you make that assertion based on what?
based on your words. Okay, you left Islam. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
okay, you are just discussing controversial topics like